This is a man who has been fist bumped by Guy Fieri. This is a man who is a diehard Chicago Bulls fan. You know him, you love him from the No Dunks podcast. He's a writer for The Athletic. He's got a very deep collection of Top Shots. We'll talk some Top Shots and NFTs as well. But he's a dear friend of mine because he showed me around the NBA Finals, and that will always be important to me. That was so kind of him. It's Trey Kerby joining the show. Ayo! Great to have you, Trey.
Ayo! Thanks for having me, Ben. I remember those finals fondly as well. Great times. But if you're thinking I'm an expert on that kind of stuff, then feeling a little sorry for you, buddy. I had like maybe 3 times more experience, so I just knew how to not get kicked out of places. But seems to be working out all right.
Well, you do have a shared experience with me in that we are the types of NBA fans who in July and August, when our team signs players, get overtly excited. We think we're winning the NBA championship. But this year, it might actually come true for your Chicago Bulls. How you feeling? Are you just on one the last 48 hours?
I'm even more on one if you're telling me they actually got a chance at the championship. I'm excited, though. If you win day 1 and day 2 of NBA free agency, after the past 4 seasons with the Bulls, it kind of feels like title number 7. So, I don't know. I was just as excited about what Chicago did at the trade deadline last year. That didn't work out too well. I was very excited about what the Bulls did before the 1920 season, bringing in Thad Young and Thomas Satoransky. That didn't work out, but Ben, I'm thinking this time, 3rd time is the charm. It's got to work out this time, right?
Well, I just love that you've got your buddy Skeets from No Dunks, who is all things Toronto Raptors, and he's got to deal with the emotions of Kyle Lowry leaving, but then DeMar DeRozan, arguably the greatest Raptor of all time, now playing for one of his best friend's teams. What was the conversations like with Skeets yesterday about DeRozan coming to Chicago?
I feel like he's excited for me the same way that Raptors fans and Blazers fans were both very complimentary of each other when the Norman Powell and Gary Trent Jr. trade went down. You know, the Raptors were talking to the Blazers fans saying, treat him well. Blazers fans were saying the same back to the Raptors, and that's what it felt like for me and Skeets. It's like you're saying, DeRozan at some point in time is going to be honored by the Raptors. He's one of their franchise icons. So after a few years down in San Antonio, you know, you could argue that DeRozan brought a title to the Raptors with the way the Kawhi Leonard trade went down. So he left on good terms. He's heading to Chicago on good terms. So, yeah, Skeets was telling me you got to treat him well. He's going to show up for you. He gets better every single year. 20 points per game in 8 straight seasons, a career high in assists last year. The guy's still getting better. So, yeah, Skeets was excited. And, you know, we already know that DeRozan looks great in red and black. So it's a perfect fit as far as I'm concerned.
Trey Kerby joins the show. He's part of the No Dunks crew, their podcast. You can get it, of course, on The Athletic and formerly of The Starters on NBA TV. I love your guys' take on basketball. You guys know I was a fan before. I could call you a friend. And what you guys have been able to build with your brand is just remarkable. You think about all the twists and turns you guys have taken in your career. But just for those who aren't familiar, how did you and Taz and Lee and Skeets all link up in the first place? And how do you explain the energy around No Dunks?
So the podcast started back in 2006. It was Skeets and Taz and our producer, JD. They all went to university together, Ryerson University up in Toronto. And if I'm not mistaken, the podcast started the very day after Kobe Bryant went for 81 against the Toronto Raptors. Like, all right, we got to get out here and podcast about this. What's a podcast? No one knows. But eventually people figured out what a podcast was. I joined in with them the summer of 2010. That was a big summer in the NBA. You know, I was happy to consider myself a free agent in that class as well. Signed with the Basketball Jones. Eventually we moved up to Toronto, my wife and I, in 2011. We were there until 2013. Working on the Basketball Jones podcast, video show, a blog, all for the Score television network in Canada. Then, in 2013, we ended up down here in Atlanta working for Turner Sports NBA TV. We were called The Starters then. And now we've moved on to The Athletic. We just finished up year 2 with The Athletic. And, you know, so that's been 15 years for the guys that started it. I'm on my 11th season. You know, I can remember back when all the guys that the Lakers signed were young guys. That's how long we've been podcasting at this point. So, yeah, you know, it's been quite a journey for us. There's 5 of us now, so it's been a lot of fun. And, you know, we just like to continue building in the NBA. It feels like in the past 15 years has gotten bigger and bigger and crazier and crazier. You know, we're talking about free agency in August now. Who knows what's going to happen next?
Trey Kerby joining the show. Ben Lyons in for Rich on the Rich Eisen Show. And through your travels covering the NBA, you formed a connection, a friendship, or some type of relationship with Guy Fieri. For people who don't know, Guy's a real deal basketball fan. Where does your respect and admiration for Guy Fieri come from, Trey?
Years and years of watching diners, drive-ins, and dives. From, 11 o'clock p.m. to 3 a.m., they'll put on Food Network time and time again. I think it was the All-Star game in New Orleans. Guy had landed, like you're saying, he's a big basketball fan. He said he had just landed there, and I sent a joke tweet out saying, you want to come judge our dunk contest? This is back when we were doing the television show, and Lee and I, also on the show, would go head-to-head in a dunk contest on an 8-foot rim. Shocked me when Guy said, yeah, I'll do it. Got in touch with him. He actually came to the show. He ended up helping judge the contest. And since he's a big basketball fan, and the Warriors, he's a Warriors fan in particular, they were really good. So Guy would be at pretty much every NBA Finals during the Dynasty era Warriors, and I would try and link up with him when we could. So it was pretty special for me to actually, see Guy Fieri, who I've been watching since I was in college. Suddenly he's on the show that we're working on. That's what basketball will get for you sometimes. Pretty fun stuff, man.
Trey, you're down in Atlanta now, and the Hawks have had a resurgence. I found out the hard way that Trae Young is for real. What's the vibe like in the city? I know the city shuts down when the United play. I know everybody's obviously geeked up on football down in that part of the country. But as far as the Hawks go and where they sit in the city, what's it been like being in Atlanta and seeing this run they're going on?
Oh, it was incredible. We were down at, we call it the Fortress, State Farm Arena for normal people down here, and it was sold out for every game in the playoffs. And that's similar to how it was back in 2015 when the Hawks were a 60-win team, but that had not been the case in the years in between. But to see them get even into the playoffs was impressive. With the way the season started, they made the coaching change halfway through, and that really got the team unified and pointing the right direction. Then, unfortunately for you, Ben, Trae Young made even a bigger jump in the playoffs, going into that first game when he became the NBA's most likable villain, hitting the floater, shushing the crowd, putting his finger very high up on his nose. It got people fired up. I feel like it won fans for the Hawks, not just in Atlanta, which, was excited to have a basketball team doing well again, but also around the league. It's been a while since the Hawks have had a marketable star. Even when they were at their best, Joe Johnson and Al Horford and Paul Millsap, they're all all-star caliber players, but they don't have necessarily the cultural cachet that Trae Young does. So with a flashy player and a young player that it feels like you can actually build something around, it's been really exciting to have that happening here in Atlanta, especially considering the way they did the offseason last year. They signed a whole bunch of veterans, and we're saying, okay, it feels like they got a lot of players here. Let's see if they all pan out and if they're able to gel together. Took a little bit of time before they actually got on the same page, but once they did, they looked really good, and now you got to assume that the future is pretty bright here in Atlanta, especially considering once a guy like DeAndre Hunter comes back, we'll see how Cam Reddish progresses, but having that superstar in Trae Young, that's a huge first building block.
Trey Kerby joins the show. You know him from The Athletic, part of the No Dunks crew. Check out their podcast. Always one of my favorite listens, especially this time of year, because there's certain players that just become part of your guys' lexicon, part of your language. And I feel like as a Bulls fan now, with Lonzo and Caruso, these are guys who could become part of the No Dunks thing. What are you most looking forward to about having Alex Caruso in Chicago?
I'm hoping that he still gets the Lakers bump. I'm hoping he still is a super famous guy, even if he ends up being the sixth man on the Chicago Bulls. But honestly, for me, it's just exciting for the Bulls to be a team that is talked about as a basketball team. Because for, I don't know, it must have been about 2015 till probably 2021, January 2021. If the Bulls were in the news and we were talking about them on the show or the podcast, it was probably for something bad that happened, whether that be a fight in practice between Bobby Portis and Nikola Mirotic, or their coach putting in a punch clock to get everybody to work hard. The Bulls were a little bit of a laughingstock, which is not what you want from one of the bigger franchises in the league. So the fact that they have started acting like a major market and have trying to put some wins on the scoreboard. It's exciting to me to have the Bulls be a relevant team. You know, they came down to the final couple of weeks of the season trying to get into the play-in this year. And to me, that felt like going for championship number 7. Just the Bulls trying to get the 10th seed to play one more game in this play-in tournament. Hopefully they're a playoff team next season, but at the very least, it doesn't feel like they're lost in the wilderness anymore.
Wow, very tempered expectations. Hopefully a playoff team next season. I introduced you saying they got a shot at the chip. We're all in on these Bulls.
I'm trying to slow play it here, Ben. I was telling everybody that I bet that the Bulls were back last year, and it was looking good up until the All-Star break. They had their first All-Star since Jimmy Butler and Pau Gasol back in the day. They made the huge trade for Vucevic. And then they had basically their worst month of the season, and the Bulls were decidedly not back after the All-Star break. So I'm trying to temper my expectations here. Also on the podcast today, though, I did say they're going to sign Nikola Jokic in 2023. So I don't know
very tempered expectations right there,
Yeah,
Trey.
exactly. No championship this year, but an MVP in a couple of years. We'll see.
Yesterday was one of those life-changing moments where the world that we live in was never the same as the one that we woke up in. Where were you when Melo signed with the Lakers?
I was so happy to actually see it happen, man. It's like once Melo was done with the Thunder, once Melo was done with the Rockets, it just felt like LeBron's bringing him to the Lakers at some point. I know Lakers fans have had the Melo Photoshops ready for a decade at this point. So to actually see LeBron and Melo united after a decade and a half in the NBA, it's exciting. I mean, we're not seeing LeBron and Melo from the Heat and Knicks days going back and forth with each other, but it's going to be fun to see them playing on the same team. It's just a bummer that they can't get Dwayne Wade out of retirement, that Chris Paul signed that gigantic deal with the Suns. Otherwise, we could have the whole banana boat crew. That would have been fun, too. But
although Melo never officially photographed on the banana boat. Just want to put that out there.
Good point. There.
Hey, Trey, you and I had the privilege of working with the NBA, working at Turner for a number of years. And what's so special about that place, in addition to the great people who work there, it's the vibe in the studio off camera, because the way it's built down there in Atlanta, you have the different studios and they're all kind of on top of each other. And there's a green room, a common area where people are passing through doing their shows, they're getting makeup, they're having a production meeting. And you get to rub shoulders with some of the greatest basketball players of all time. I remember just walking through the makeup room one day, and there's Dwayne Wade, Oscar Robertson, George Gervin. You're just a kid in a candy store. You were down there a lot longer than I was, and every day. Do you have any moments just from kind of hanging around behind the scenes with some of the guys that have stayed with you or stood out? I remember when Kevin Garnett was screaming at me about the property taxes in Malibu.
Yeah, I got a great Kevin Garnett story, too. I grew up just outside of Chicago, so I remember seeing Kevin Garnett play basketball in high school. I remember that he wasn't even the best player on his high school team. There was a guy named Ronnie Fields who played for Farragut back in the day. They said this guy could have been the next Jordan. Unfortunately, he got in a car accident after his high school years, so he never actually made it to the NBA. But I brought up something about seeing KG and Ronnie Fields play back in high school, 25 years ago or whatever. And then he told me an unbelievable story about Ronnie Fields that made it sound like he had a 60-inch vertical. Like, I don't know about that, KG, but anytime Kevin Garnett gets to telling a story, it's more exciting than any story anybody else could tell because it's KG telling it at full KG intensity. The guy doesn't go halfway on anything. So anytime it was like an Area 21 day and there was Kevin Garnett was filming something, it was going to be louder and way more hype than any other day in makeup. I would leave the locker room after just talking to KG for like 2 minutes. I was fired up to do my show. I was like, I want to go play defense against somebody that's up there in the studio, man.
I remember the day they had the fondue machine on set for Jason Williams, and KG just discovered white chocolate on a stick, and he was going crazy. That was just a very special day on set.
There's another great moment of him playing Jenga, I think, with Tony Allen. And it's like, nobody has been more hyped to play Jenga ever than Kevin Garnett was.
I know. I think you and I, and maybe Garnett's family, might have been the only fans of Area 21. It's far too short-lived. Like, what? Can't get more Kevin Garnett playing Jenga? That'd be the best. Trey, appreciate you coming on as you're celebrating the Chicago Bulls winning a championship here in August. A big day for you, man. I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you. I feel like you've won something and done something, but you just haven't. But congratulations.
Yeah, I haven't actually done anything except for tell people that the Bulls are back before they finally came back. But this time, it is for real. I mean, they signed Tony Bradley today. Ben, people are lining up to sign with the Chicago Bulls. That has never happened.
Those Tony Bradley Top Shots are going to add nicely to your collection. You going in on the Top Shot. I see you talking about it. Are you buying more video highlights late at night?
I've got every Bulls moment that I can get so far, except for an old Jimmy Butler one. I got to pull the trigger on that one. But, yeah, man, for me, Top Shot has been a nice little hobby. It's like I'm watching all of these games anyways, so I might as well continue watching them in 15-second clips. And for me, it's exciting to actually be like, oh, yeah, I remember when that play had happened. I thought it was going to be a Top Shot. Someday it actually will be, and we'll see what it's like in the future.
No Dunks is the podcast. Trey Kerby, thanks for showing me around the NBA Finals and for taking some time with us today.
All right, Ben. Thanks for having me on. I'll catch you when we get a Knicks versus Bulls playoff series.
Oh, can you imagine? Like the good old days?
Ooh, baby.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I just hope a little different results this time. Thanks so much, Trey. Trey Kerby joining the show.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.